online, on the TuneIn app.
And on your smart speaker.
Play Shock Radio.
This is the sound of Salford.
Shock Radio News.
This is your Shock News Show with Alfie Garner, Noah Buckingham-Reid and Benny Fiddlemore. It's 7 o'clock, your headlines. Donald Trump has won the US presidential race, with voters decisively giving him a second chance in the White House. The 78-year-old passed the 270 electoral votes needed to win, with 4 of the 7 key swing states still yet to declare. The Republicans have also taken back control of the US Senate. World leaders are braced for complicated fallout from a second Trump term, with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu making it clear that he's pleased with the result. In a tweet, he described it as a history's greatest comeback. Meanwhile, Russia says its focus is on the war with Ukraine remains unchanged. During the election campaign, Mr. Trump repeatedly claimed he would quickly end the war there. 3 people have been arrested on suspicion of manslaughter in connection with a fatal house explosion in Newcastle. A 7-year-old boy and a man in their 30s were killed in a blast in Benwell last month. And Reform MP Lee Anderson has been told to say sorry for swearing in the House of Commons security guard when his entry pass did not work. A watchdog found his behaviour broke bullying and harassment rules. So, lots to talk about. It's the day after the night before. Were you two watching the election?
I was watching until about 2 a.m. and then I called it a day.
Time to go to sleep.
Yeah, definitely. Got up again at 5 just to have a little look. Saw all these news notifications saying Trump is on the verge of winning, thinking, I must be still dreaming. It must be a bit of a nightmare. And then I went back to bed and then woke up again at about 10 just to fully read everything, watch everything, get a catch up, look back on the clips from the night. Oh yeah, he's in, he's back. He's back for another 4 years. Trump has won.
And similar for me, I think I was up, and I think when you move from being by the desk and watching to sitting in the bed and watching, I think it was time to go to sleep. But yeah, I had a good time watching it up until we started getting the actual results in.
Yeah, it was definitely fun. I was awake until 5:30 this morning watching the coverage.
That's commitment.
It was commitment.
How many energy drinks have you had today?
None today, but I had 3 last night. During the entire watch period, I had 4.5 hours sleep today, so I'm running on very little, put it that way. Also, that a fun part of it was getting to the point where we saw the seats started coming in. Obviously, we got very quick results from one part, which had 6 residents.
We did.
We got that during our show yesterday.
Was that in the middle of our show?
It was.
There you go.
It was just before, in the middle, 6 residents, and then obviously all the results started flooding in, as you would say. Still waiting for a few.
Well, I think it was quite impressive the way we got the results in overnight. I think many of us were expecting these results to come in more of a drip feed. We were expecting legal battles in some of the swing states. We were expecting long-winded, and we saw in 2020 how this was drawn out, the period. It did, maybe perhaps because of COVID, but I think many people didn't quite expect the pace in which we managed to get the results this time around.
Yeah.
So I think the way they came in was quite exceptional, and the fact that it's so strongly in the favour of Donald Trump today as we're waking up, I think it was quite shocking for lots of people here.
Yeah, because it wasn't until the Saturday night where Biden was actually declared winner of the election in 2020.
Right.
So to have it was 5 a.m. UK time, I think, when they finally declared it. So it was probably only about 1 a.m. over in the States, in most states.
It was
very, very quick.
It was a very weird result. So he declared himself as winner 7 a.m. over here.
Which was expected for Trump to declare as winner. But we still haven't seen Kamala Harris concede, actually.
Kamala Harris is going to concede at some point today. It should be during a address to the nation, where she will concede the result and officially hand over her duties, obviously in time, to J.D. Vance as vice president. But also, it was officially announced during one of the results that CBS, NBC, BBC, Sky News all then projected Donald Trump as winner about 10:30 this morning, our time. So quite late-ish for some of them, but obviously compared to last time, very,
and I think we got
early.
a real taste for what those results would be as they came in when we got the first swing state. I think it was North Carolina or one of them, the
yeah.
first swing states that came in. And when that went Trump, and I think a lot of them at that point were beginning to lean Trump, I think there was something in the air. I think we saw, I'm not sure if you've seen that Kamala Harris's watch party, people began sort of dripping out quite early into the night in the US, sort of after midnight, when a lot of these swing states were starting to lean more towards going Trump. I think that was when we got the idea that this might be the result.
For sure, yeah. And obviously, it comes with its swings and roundabouts. Obviously, we don't officially recognise the results until December, early December, and then obviously gets inaugurated in January. It does bring up a question about whether Biden will attend that inauguration, because former presidents usually do, as a way to hand over the baton, as you would say.
I think it'd be a real indicator for the next 4 years of America and the state of democracy in America if Biden doesn't attend that. I think for the values of the Democratic Party, I expect him to attend.
You would hope so, wouldn't you?
I'm sure he will. Yeah, I'm sure he will.
Well, let's get a little bit of an extra opinion on this. Sky News' David Belvins was in Washington, and he says Donald Trump will return to the White House on the back of an extraordinary set of results.
The Republicans have taken back the Senate. It looks like they're going to retain the House. There are vacancies on the Supreme Court. So Donald Trump is going to wield power that is beyond his wildest expectations.
Wildest expectations.
Well, I think this is another key story of the election, and one that many people didn't. Maybe if you weren't paying so much attention, you wouldn't know that there were nearly about a third of the Senate up for re-election. The whole entirety of the House of Representatives, which is still undecided, but I think that's leaning towards a retaining of the majority in the House. In the Senate, a very, very slim majority, but a very, very important one, that they now have a working majority in the Senate. And with a majority in the Senate, a majority in the House, like they mentioned on Sky, these sort of vacancies in the Supreme Court, we could see massive change, and very, very quickly.
Yeah, of course.
It's looking like it's going to be a very Republican United States of America. And with a Senate that's controlled by the Republicans and a House of Representatives controlled by the Republicans, Trump is more likely to be able to just do what he wants. And that means that we could have a lot of new laws coming in the next few years, a lot of new policies. I mean, NATO, that's a good question. Is Trump going to just leave NATO? Again, Paris Climate Agreement, the thing that he left before, as he did with NATO in his first term as president. Biden put the US back into both of those two. Is Trump just going to undo that again and take them both out straight away? He has the power to do it now.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, during the election, Trump had a very, very concise poll to go off. He had a very precise campaign to go off, because his was "Make America Great Again." Obviously, he had his slogan, but also he only had two major policies that he ever promoted. Obviously, he had his actual ones, but Kamala Harris was all over the place. She had loads of policies she was trying to promote at the same time.
The major difference in the state of the Republican Party, their lean towards populism. I think I mentioned it yesterday, but simple answers to complex issues. This is not something which is very easy. I think Trump sees it in that light, and I think his voters have now bought into that. The fact that he said he could end the Ukraine-Russia conflict in a day. He's spoken to the Middle East. He said he'd end that conflict. He's putting in these tariffs. He's saying this is going to be how we hold leverage over Mexico, how we hold leverage over China with a 60% tariff. This is how he believes he can hold leverage over the world. And I just don't quite believe just yet that these policies, which he will implement, I do believe that he will implement them. We've talked about the whole Project 2025. These things are now very much feasible, and I think it's massively concerning for the state of democracy and the state of America in the world landscape and within the conflicts currently ongoing.
I think Kamala Harris lost the election before she was even nominated by the Democrats, to be honest, because I don't think this has been an election about policy, because we haven't really heard policies being explained by both of the candidates, because instead it's been just a shouting match. I mean, from a state of an election, it's been a bit of a disgrace, really. It's just been abusing each other constantly. But I think that the election was lost before she even came in, because I think the damage was done under Biden. I mean, the decline in the economy over the last 4 years, and she's been the vice president to that, the failure to tackle the problems at the border, which she was in charge of, and then we have Biden saying Vice President Trump. We have Biden saying President Putin when referring to Zelensky. Trump's assassination attempt. I think Biden was so weak on those issues that the damage was done. And Trump has had 2 years to prepare for this election. Kamala has only been the nominee for 4 months. She's not had a time to put together a campaign where she's been able to really clearly explain what she wants to do. Of course, she's gone on about her reproductive rights and abortion. That's very clear. And again, with gun laws, very clear. But other than that, we don't really know much about what she wants to do because she just hasn't had the time to put a campaign together. And I think that's why Trump, who, it's not really policy when it comes to Trump. It's that, like you say with Project 2025 and that beginning of an authoritarianism, it's his character. I'm trying to think of the phrase that they always use, cult of personality. I think with Trump, it's a cult personality. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Kamala Harris has that reputation of being next to Biden for the last 4 years, so she can't really escape that in this election. So she will always have
being
that.
the incumbent, right? And I think you might just pass on the reputation. I think it was hard for people to see past her being a pass by of Biden and a big part of that Biden administration, which was going to be voted out. I think if we look back at the polls from before she came in June, and Biden was absolutely being destroyed in the polls. We had these major events with Trump.
Yep.
He was smashing it in the campaign, maybe not to his own doing. We had the assassination attempt, and I think we do have to give some good grace to Kamala Harris on her campaign and how she managed to turn around those polls and make it 50-50. I mean, it was on a knife edge. We used the phrase yesterday, it's on a knife edge election, and she was a major part in turning that around from like a 70-30 back to a 50-50.
Oh yeah, it was very impressive how the polls changed after she became the candidate. But I think you're right. Unfortunately, this Biden administration has been weak. It has seen conflict in Ukraine, conflict in Israel, and
Is any of that of the Biden administration's?
Well, it's not necessarily directly as a result of the Biden administration, but it has happened under and during the Biden administration, and voters are going to look at that and think the world is more fragile now than it was 4 years ago, and that's going to convince them how they're going to vote. And sadly, it's not under her fault, but unfortunately, as his number 2, what he's done or his presidency is going to reflect on her too. And I think if the Democrats had a proper process of selecting a candidate for this election, if Biden had said 2022 that he wasn't going to stand again, maybe then she would have been able to campaign on her own account for longer, get through the primaries or whatever, and then maybe that would have helped her in this campaign. But unfortunately, there just wasn't the time for her to do that.
No, she would have struggled anyway, even if she was the nominee from the start. Obviously, Joe Biden was the nominee and then had that awful debate with Donald Trump, then dropped out. But even if she was the candidate right from the very start, even if she was the DNC's preferred candidate, she would have had a nightmare to follow. 4 years of trying to fix an economy that was left
It's
behind.
been a struggling in the messaging of the Harris campaign.
Well, yeah, she always had a struggle when it came to the messaging because she couldn't fix on that one core policy like Donald Trump could. Well, Luke Jones, our head of news, has been in America all week and has spoken to Manuel Abarca, a Jackson County legislator in Kansas City. Here he is talking about people waiting in line to vote.
Polls. If you are in line at 7 o'clock, no matter how long the line is, and you stay in line, you can vote. So what happens is resources get rushed towards large polls that have long lines to keep people in the line. And so, in fact, you asked about election laws. At one point, Republicans had banned folks from giving water, food, resources to stay in line, to disincentivize you to stay in line. And so I think that was overturned. I don't care. I would love for the SOS to prosecute me for giving an older woman or man a bottle of water. They deemed it as bribing for a vote. I'm not bribing anything. I'm making sure they don't pass out. And if we want to litigate that in court, I'm sure the county will defend me. If not, I'll find somebody who will.
Find someone who will. Sorry about the car beeping as well in the background there.
It's very interesting, this message around staying in line. I think both candidates put out a message on the night before, on the day, of if you're in line, stay in line. Don't let anybody tell you you can't if you're as long as you're in the line before the polls close, you're entitled to vote. So I think obviously an important message, and one that Trump was actually on the attack line on, sort of claiming cheating, sort of claiming there were people getting people out of queues, doing sort of misdirection.
Yeah.
And I do question where that voice is now. Now he has won this election.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of controversies and issues last night. There was obviously lines. Obviously, he claimed cheating in Philadelphia quite early on in the election, saying, obviously due to the voters. The district attorney for Philadelphia says there's no evidence to substantiate that claim that there has been any kind of cheating. There was also a bomb threat at 4 key battleground states last night. It was rumoured, and it's not credible, according to the FBI, who said at least 2 polling sites in Georgia were briefly evacuated. They also added Michigan, Arizona, Wisconsin was targeted, and it appears that many hoax threats appear to come from Russian email domain. Russia denies any form of election interference. What do we think about that sort of era? Because this was really early on in the night, obviously.
Yeah, early on.
As people were still voting, it was still as people were getting to them ballot boxes.
Well, I think it does open this sort of questionable box around election integrity, around election interference. It's a debate we've had hashed out. It's a thing that's been on in the voice of Republican speakers. We've had Democrat speakers talk about election integrity. I think it's a non-debate. To be honest, I think it's obviously a contentious. It's become a contentious issue in the US, but this sort of debate, I understand that there has been, this Russian interference claim or this Russian domain emails that the FBI have uncovered. I think it does make you question, but as far as we know, I think it's difficult to comment.
It's too early to comment.
Yeah,
Until there's any investigation done, we don't know anything, whether there's any Russian interference.
The FBI has said there's a chance. They say there's no evidence of it. We have to wait for an FBI statement to come through before we can confirm or deny anything, of course. Well, Luke Jones was also out and about chatting to voters. Here he is talking to Brian Salder about why he's going for President Trump.
I'd known who I was going to vote for since 4 years ago. You know what I mean?
And that is?
And that's Donald Trump. And let me just tell you about why I support Donald Trump. So I've always kind of voted 50% Democrat, 50% Republican. Because we have a two-party system.
Yeah.
And so I feel like both parties should work for us. And if you're just voting one way, then I think that you're putting yourself in a bad situation where these people that we elect start to take you for granted, right? And so I kind of always had this strategy where whoever was like the governor or whoever was the president, I'd kind of those are the executive branch, and so I would always kind of try and vote for somebody who is in the opposite party in the legislative branch, so that they had to negotiate in order to pass legislation and get stuff done. And so in 2016, there was probably like 15 Republicans that were running. And I was committed to voting for a Republican because we had had Barack Obama for 8 years. And I was like, well, okay, well, let's give the Republican a chance. Let's see what they can do. And Donald Trump was probably like my second to last choice.
Second to last choice a few years ago. Now, obviously, was a core choice for President Trump for that voter. What does it say, though, about how both the Democrats and the Republicans have changed over the last, not only 4 years, but over the last decade and a bit, to try and get those voters back to their core beliefs?
I think the Republicans have definitely gone to the extremes. I think this Donald Trump administration that we're going to see now in 2024 is very different to the Donald Trump administration we got in 2016. I think it's almost trying to be more cultish, and I suppose that generates energy, and that's why people throw their support behind Donald Trump. But it's very interesting. I think it's extraordinary that we've got a situation where we have a president who's been convicted of 34 counts of fraud, has had civil cases of rape posed against him. He's claimed that immigrants eat cats and dogs, and yet he's won over half of the popular vote. I think it's because people like maybe like the entertainment a little bit, and they like his character. So I don't know when you say how the Republicans and Democrats have changed, I don't know whether the Republican Party itself has changed as such. I think it is an individual situation here. With the Democrats, I think, again, it's just they've been a bit weak, and they seem quite divided. And they never seem to get the right candidates. I mean, Kamala Harris is a better candidate because she's younger and she's different to what we've seen before, where it's just been men in their 80s campaigning against each other. But unfortunately, like we said before, they couldn't appeal to voters as much because Biden's administration overshadowed her, being his VP.
Right, I think this is a fundamental issue of the left and how Europe, we've seen it in Europe, and now we're seeing it in America. We've seen it in America since 2016. This shift to the right, and I don't think the way that the left has responded, the way the Democrat Party has responded, for example, has worked for them electorally. I know they were elected in 2020, but I just think the left now needs to reset and figure out how they appeal to this working class base. I think this is the mistake of the Democrat Party in the way that they have essentially alienated the working class. They feel like they can't relate. They feel that this is a liberal elite which they cannot vote for. And Donald Trump, like this guy said, he wasn't his first choice in years previous. But I think it's even more emphasized now, and the polarized nature of America has pushed their working class further into the camp of the far right, because they no longer feel that a party like the Democrat Party works for them anymore.
Yeah.
They feel they don't see themselves in that party.
Yeah, because he can use his cult of personality that he's generated over the last 8 years to appeal to the working class people who probably feel left behind by the Democrats. But then they've got Trump who's saying, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll make America great again. It'll be a golden age for America. And they think, well, if they've got no one else to turn to who relates to them, well, this guy's saying all the right things, we'll vote for him. And that's what's happened, clearly, last night.
Well, there's a lot of reaction overnight, especially from high-level politicians. Keir Starmer told the House of Commons earlier today during PMQs he looks forward to working with the incoming president.
Can I begin by congratulating President-elect Trump on his historic election victory. As the closest of allies, the UK and US will continue to work together to protect our shared values of freedom and democracy.
Meanwhile, the president of Ukraine is among the world leaders as well to congratulate Donald Trump on his victory in the US. Vladimir Zelensky said he's looking forward to what he calls Mr. Trump's decisive leadership in the run-up to the election. The 78-year-old claimed he'll be able to quickly resolve the war in Ukraine. Ukrainian MP Kira Ruddik says she hopes he'll take time to understand what is going on in the region.
We really hope that the campaigning is one thing, and the president of the leader of the democratic world will take what is happening in Ukraine very seriously.
So, obviously, international reaction has been a big thing in this election. A lot of people congratulating the president-elect. What does it turn into when it comes to these sort of mini endorsements for the change in leadership?
Well, we know that one of the president's key roles in the US is to be in charge of foreign policy and where the US stands in foreign relations. And obviously those major conflicts at the moment and those major relationships are with the likes of the UK, with Canada, with these major trade relations, but also with currently Ukraine. And we heard Zelensky, we've seen Zelensky sweep up with optimism for Ukraine, and I'm not sure that was quite expected, but he seems to be welcoming with open arms. They said they had a meeting in September. He said that they look forward to an era of the strong United States of America under Trump's leadership. But he also said he relies on continued strong bipartisan support for Ukraine in the US, and I'm not sure that he's going to get that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think Donald Trump has always been very much America first, America first, America first. So why would he, coming in, claim to end a war that's been going on for nearly 3 years in one day? and benefit Ukraine, because Trump is the sort of politician who appeals to his own people. He's very much US centered as opposed to the global world. So realistically, I don't think he cares about Ukraine. I think that the world leaders are having to say, well done, we want to work with you, because they need the US on side. But I don't think that this is going to be good for Ukraine. I don't think so.
No, well, that's almost all we've got time for. A very heavy subject, for sure. The US election will continue to dominate the headlines for weeks to come, if not months. But let's look through those headlines that you've seen today. Donald Trump has won the US election in the US presidential election, with voters decisively giving him a second chance in the White House. The 78-year-old passed the 270 electoral college votes needed to win, with 4 of the 7 key swing states declaring for him so far. Republicans have also taken back control of the US Senate. World leaders are braced for a complicated fallout from Trump's second term, with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying he's clear and pleased with the results. In a tweet, he described it as a history greatest comeback. Meanwhile, Russia says the focus is on its war with Ukraine, and it remains unchanged. During the election campaign, Trump repeatedly claimed he would quickly end the war. 3 people have been arrested on suspicion of manslaughter in connection with a fatal house explosion in Newcastle. A 7-year-old boy and a man in his 30s were killed in a blast in Benwell last month. And Reform MP Lee Anderson has been told to say sorry for swearing at a House of Commons security guard when his entry pass didn't work. A watchdog found his behaviour broke bullying and harassment rules. Weather tonight largely dry this evening, with a few clear spells to start. Low clouds gradually building from the south, with some patchy drizzle across the hills by dawn. A minimum of 11 degrees across Manchester. This episode of the Shock News Show was directed for Shock TV by Aaron Walkden and produced by Alfie Mulcahy and Luke Jones. That was your Shock News Show with Alfie Garner, Noah Buchanan-Reid and Benny Fiddlemore. Your Shock Bulletins return tomorrow at 10 a.m.